Hi, my name's Will. I hesitate to call myself an expert in anything, but I've been working in domestic fireplaces and flues for about 30 years alongside my work as a blacksmith, and I currently specialise in making and fitting chimney dampers. But back when I used to work for somebody else, we did a lot of fitting of wood burning stoves, we did a lot of chimney lining, fitted canopies to fireplaces, and general troubleshooting when people had a fireplace that didn't work as they wanted it to. This is my fireplace at home. Please ignore the fact there's a wood burning stove in there for the moment. Incidentally, this is a wood warm which we inherited with the house, and it's brilliant. I'll give them a little plug because they're good people. But this fireplace is an interesting way to start this discussion, because I see hundreds of these fireplaces, and they're very, very typical. They're about 3 foot square with this gently curved top, very often an old cartwheel recycled as the lintel. And they cause quite a lot of problems because people move into a house, they quite often excavate and remove a load of stuff, and they find this square opening and they go, oh, it's marvellous, we found the original fireplace. We can curl up on the rug on Christmas and have a roaring fire in front of us and have stockings hanging from the mantel, and it'll be wonderful. And what normally happens is the fireplace smokes like crazy into the room. And the reason for that is that this is a good example of when a fireplace is not a fireplace. This is actually, if you'll pardon the expression, a Victorian builder's opening. Now that's not what happens when a builder bends over. That is the hole that a builder would leave in Victorian times at the bottom of a flue for the customer to choose what appliance went in there. So if it was a living room, it would probably be a Victorian tiled insert. It might be a register grate, which would just be a grate with the actual grate would be just in the middle there. It might very well be an old-fashioned range. So you'd have, again, a little grate in the middle, a hot plate on the side, and a baker's oven on the other side. But the important thing was that the effective fireplace opening would be greatly reduced. And the reason that matters is that the flue provided with this fireplace is not a flue designed to run an opening that size. And now we get to the crux of the matter. You need the right flue for your fireplace. You can't just buy whatever the builder's merchant's stock chimney liners are and run anything from a Victorian fireplace up to an ingle nook on it. I see this again and again and again. People trying to run bigger fireplaces than the flue will support. The other very common thing I see is flues that have been lined sometimes by big national franchisers, and they've lined the chimney far too small to run the fireplace. They will say that's the biggest liner I could get down the chimney, so that's what I fitted, and that's fine as long as they've told the customer that their open fire will never work again. But they tend not to do that. The other big mistake I see is fireplaces with a nice big gather to a big flue, and then on top someone stuck a little pot, and that too just chokes the whole thing down. Smoke can't get out of the pot fast enough, and the fireplace will smoke. The chimney needs to be in proportion to this fireplace all the way up. What's the right proportion? Well, in UK building regs, they require flue to have a cross-sectional area of at least 1/6 or 15% of the fireplace area. So don't worry about the depth, the width times the height of the fireplace, and then 1/10 of that should be the area of the flue. Sorry, 1/6 of that should be the area of the flue. For building regs, I got ahead of myself. My rule of thumb is 1/10. 1/10 normally works, and it makes the maths an awful lot easier. So, by way of example, this fireplace is actually 36 inches across and 38 inches vertically. Excuse the imperial measurements, but I learnt that way. These fireplaces were built imperially, and it keeps the numbers manageable. So, I've got a cheat sheet down here somewhere. 36 by 38 inch fireplace gives you 1,368 square inches. And I just said the flue should then be equal to at least 1/10 of that. So we want a 136 square inch flue. What does that equate to? Well, for an example, a fireplace like this would typically have been built with a 1 brick by 1 brick flue internally. So that's 9 inches by 9 inches, 81 square inches, which is a long way below the 136 you want. If you went to a 12 by 12 brick flue, or masonry flue. That gives you 144 square inches, so that would be nicely just above the 136 you need. If you went to a circular flue, you'd need to go up to about 14 inches round. A 12-inch round flue is 113 square inches or so, so you need to go that little bit bigger. Now you do always get a few of these that work against all the odds. They're just in a perfect location, and the drawer is brilliant, and possibly people always keep the house very warm, so there's always a good flow of air through the house, and that helps. But generally, this fireplace won't work with the flue that's provided. What you can do, which might make it better, you can raise the hearth. You can add a couple of bricks to the hearth, or you can have a little canopy coming down at the top. And if you have the canopy coming down at an angle, so that it both helps gather the smoke past that nasty flat bit of lintel and reduces this area, it'll help. Putting the grate on stilts doesn't help that much. It's all about the airflow through this area and how fast that can get through the flue at the top. In a perfect world, you want a nice smooth transition, so a kind of upside down funnel shape to where the flue reaches the size that it continues on up the chimney. And this is by far 99% of the fireplaces I see that smoke badly, and you can always tell when you walk into the room. It smells of smoke. You can very often see little grey or brown stains coming up the fireplace here. 99% of the time I see a smoking fireplace, chimney is too small for the fireplace. Sometimes the chimney's been altered, sometimes the fireplace has been altered, sometimes it was never built right to start with, but that's the cause. The only other cause that's very common is air supply. So if you have that volume of air going up the chimney constantly, it needs to be replaced, or the room and ultimately the house just becomes a vacuum. I'll talk about that in more detail in another video, but it's very easy to diagnose. If your fireplace doesn't work until you open a window or a door and then it works, then you know air supply is your problem. Finally, downdrafts. A classic downdraft is very, very rare in my experience. I should qualify that by saying I work mainly around the middle of the UK. I don't get out onto the coast where the weather gets a bit more extreme. But downdrafts, especially sort of constant downdrafts, are very, very rare and are normally caused by either another fireplace that's drawing very well and is sucking its replacement air down this flue, or possibly in commercial premises like a restaurant or a hotel, you have a massive extractor fan in the kitchen, and again, the only way it can replace the air into the room is by sucking it down a chimney. But the downdraft that people think they have is almost always a lack of updraft, and it's caused by the chimney not being big enough. And one of the other quite comic things I see is people who've got a fireplace and it smokes because it's got too small a pot on the top of the chimney, for example. They think it's a downdraft. Their builder puts on an anti-downdraft cowl. Most of the anti-downdraft cowls do work for a genuine downdraft, but if you stick them on top of a chimney that's a bit too small, it just hinders the updraft a bit more. And on extreme cases, I've seen a chimney with a pot on top of it, an anti-downdraft pot stuck on top of that pot, and then some kind of cowl system stuck on top of that anti-downdraft cowl. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. What you need to do is open up the chimney and let it breathe properly. Certainly fit a bird guard and rain guard on the top, but it shouldn't restrict the chimney at the top. If you get this ratio right, it should work. There are lots of other things which affect how well a chimney works, but honestly, this is by far the most important thing. 1 to 6 to comply with building regs in a new build, which gives you a very large chimney. 1 to 10 will work in my experience, and the maths is easy. Thank you very much. I'm Will. I will be back with another video soon. Cheers.